It's a roller coaster. Being a parent is a roller coaster. Being an entrepreneur is a roller coaster. And, just learning to ride the ups and downs. It's so difficult to manage the emotions of all of that.
Like, maybe let's backtrack a little bit, because obviously I've known you for quite a while now, but let's take us back even further than that. Tell us about your background, where you grew up, how you became involved with like personal fitness and stuff.
Yeah, so I am originally from Woburn Green, which is super close to you in Marlow. And yeah, I grew up there, school there and everything. Went to university in Sheffield to study hospitality. So not currently the same career path that I'm currently doing, but that was where I started my own fitness journey. I started to take part in my own fitness. I guess I'll give you a bit of a background about that. I was kind of overweight. I wouldn't say I was fat, but I was definitely chubby and insecure about it. And I'd recently gone through a breakup with my first girlfriend that I'd ever had at that point. I was kind of like 19, 20, broken up, was like, how have I let myself get to this point? And then it's from there, I just got propelled. And luckily I was in amongst like the right people. I just got propelled into taking care of myself in terms of like physical health and fitness. Um, that's where I found my love for for fitness. And then after university, I got a job in a corporate office. I was doing customer support, that kind of thing. And alongside that is when I started doing CrossFit. I met you, and I decided that I wanted to make a career change. And the point for that for me was when my position at the corporate job was up for redundancy because they were moving the office to Wales. And so my role was up for redundancy. So I decided to do a personal training qualification. And then I am now a personal trainer. So yeah, it kind of went from there to me doing part-time work at the office and part-time work as a coach and a personal trainer. Then I decided to move to Vancouver, so quite far away, and I was set on I want to be a personal trainer, and that is what I want to do in Canada. Now, I was originally only came here for a year, but one thing led to the next. Now I've got family. I moved here with one suitcase, and now look at the baggage I got.
So tell us about the baggage, and the very nice baggage too.
Yeah, lovely baggage, lovely baggage. But yeah, so I've got my partner Lucy, and I've got my two kids. Autumn, she is 7 months old, and Olivia, my oldest, she is just turned 4 years old. And so what I've done more recently is, since the pandemic anyway, I've moved my business to online. So I'm not just an in-person personal trainer, although I still do some in-person hours. The majority of my business now is as an online personal trainer. And it doesn't look like I jump on Zoom calls with the clients and, tell them to go and do that machine and that machine, that kind of thing. It's very different. Most of my clients have been training in the gym for a couple of years to several years. They kind of know the basics of how to squat, bench press, deadlift, and some of those more standard exercises. And I program for them. I program their nutrition, I program their training, and they go off and do that on their own. And then they report to me once a week, generally how they're getting on, and we make tweaks to their program so they can either make progress towards a goal, whether that is to lose body fat, to gain muscle, maybe a combination of those two, or whether it's more performance based, like building strength and getting faster in a certain sport or something. So that's where I've made the complete transition of being an in-person coach to now being mostly an online coach. And that has pros and cons when it comes to trying to manage that with a family.
And this is where you and I reconnected, isn't it? Because as you say, we first met a number of years ago when you were a CrossFit coach at the local box, and you used to have the dubious pleasure of running the Daybreakers, which was, what was that, 6 o'clock start? So you kind of rocking up there about 5:45, right? So that's where we first met. But then, yeah, it's with your online coaching that we actually reconnected, isn't it? Because I've been now sort of taking your advice for just over a year and a quarter, I guess, something like that.
Mhm.
And as I alluded to in the intro, I've dropped, quite a lot of weight. I'm down 10, sort of nearly 11 kilos, and with about 4 or 5 to go, as far as, as I'd like to go. And I can personally vouch that, the remote thing does work. It's about accountability, isn't it? It's you're as good as me or as bad as me, depends which way you look at it, in terms of tracking and accountability. I'm a big fan of, if it's measurable, then it's manageable.
Exactly.
You apply that to your training and to all aspects, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. What you said there hits the nail on the head. If it's what gets measured gets managed, or what gets managed gets improved, or whatever the saying is, it is very much like that. And so one of the most common things I hear from people when they sign up as a client is, it might sound funny, they say, but I need some accountability. And honestly, that is like the least funny thing, in terms of everyone says everyone needs accountability. Like, I know exactly what to do with my own training and nutrition, but still I've hired coaches to help me plan my workouts, to tell me how many calories to eat and that kind of thing. Part of it is because it's my job and I'm my last priority when it comes to that. But also, it's like, it's nice to have someone hold you accountable to that as well, you know?
Yeah, I think it's really good. And funnily enough, we did the whole first year where there was the weekly reporting on my part. Now we've pulled that back to sort of like monthly. And I can actually feel, and we've discussed this over recent weeks, about just staying on top of that self-discipline, as much as without that date, sort of weekly, week in, week out accountability. And it is key to keeping honest with yourself, isn't it? It's also really helpful to have that discipline, not just with respect to your sort of physical health, but do you apply the same sort of measurements and the same sort of philosophy to family life, to running your business side of it, as opposed to just the training?
Yeah, definitely. I do it definitely with my business. I try and track certain things on a monthly basis. And with with family stuff, I don't think I do. I think maybe I could do that. Um, but yeah, I don't necessarily. I mean, what would I track with family stuff? I guess just keeping a schedule, that kind of thing. Like Lucy and I, we have a shared notes in on Apple. We have shared Apple notes.
Yeah.
That we have, like upcoming events, things that need to be done around the house, that kind of thing. More like checklists, really.
Checklist, keeping one another honest. Yeah, it's funny. I've had this discussion. As you know, my wife's Brazilian, and they're about as far away from being sort of measured and regimented as you can imagine. Very much the manana mentality. But I've always
Mm-hmm.
maintained. I think it was probably Jocko Willink said something like, "Within the discipline, that's the freedom lies." And I've noticed that weekdays are easy because the kids have school. My kids are that bit older, so school takes care of that. After school, sports takes care of the weekdays, and I can work around their framework quite easily. But
Mm-hmm.
weekends, as it's probably the same for you, life doesn't stop when you're an entrepreneur or a parentpreneur. You still have clients, you still have stuff to prepare. You're fantastic on social media. Your stuff is very, very funny, and you put a lot of it out there. So you've got all that to plan, record, etc. And I found that having a structure for my weekends was as important, if not more so, if I wanted to get through to Sunday night without having completely lost the shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I was battling with that a little bit, and more so a mental thing of, if I don't do some kind of work, is my business just going to crumble away from me? Or, if I don't get back to my clients at the weekends, are they going to be upset? Will they just leave me? And so part of that for me was definitely in my own head about that, when there was no real need to stress too much about that. So I found that the weekends have more been me stressing about things that needn't be stressed about. And I feel like I'm definitely getting better at that. Because when it comes to my business and running, I program people's training and nutrition, there's no real emergencies when it comes to that kind of thing. There's nothing that can't wait for a few days,
Yeah.
So that's one thing that makes me feel a little bit better about it, because if someone overeats a little bit, hopefully if they do that, I would have communicated to them up front that, that's not a bad thing necessarily, just chill and continue on. And then the other thing is just having some time off on the weekends is definitely, taking some downtime away from the business. I still have to work at the weekend sometimes, especially right now. And I guess we'll come on to my current schedule soon, because it's pretty crazy at the moment. I sometimes don't have a choice and I have to work at the weekend. But yeah, what I was going to say is actually I communicate with my clients up front. This is kind of what's expected. I don't work weekends.
Yeah.
This is what I tell people. In my head, I'm always working. That's kind of frustrating sometimes, being an entrepreneur, where you're like your head is always thinking about it. It's not like, the corporate job where you can clock off at 5 and then the weekends are yours and then you start again on Monday at 9. It's not the same as that. It's just constantly always thinking about it, always worrying and stressing. Is this all going to get taken away from me? Chances are it won't be, but
I think you're very good at this, because A, you do it with humor, and B, you do it in such a nice way. There's been a couple of times where you've said, it's like the old thing about asking forgiveness, not permission. And you've come back to a weekly report, a check-in, saying, hey, sorry, it's taken me a couple of days. I've been busy with stuff. And that's it, and people are fine with that, I think, by and large. I mean, you mentioned about your current schedule. Apparently we've got builders going on next door. I don't know if you can hear that. I'll hit the mute button.
I can a little bit.
Yeah. I'm hoping the guys in post-production can do a good job on that. But you just mentioned about your current schedule. Maybe let's touch upon that. What you said is crazy at the moment. What's happening? Are you bringing on new stuff, new clients?
Okay. This is the most busy, the most difficult I've ever had to manage my own schedule. The reason for that is Autumn, the baby, is at home all the time. I still have in-person work 3 days a week, and it's recently I'm doing like 4 hours 3 days a week, which is a significant increase to what I was doing about 6 months ago. I was doing 1 day a week for 3 hours, and now I'm there 3 days a week for 4 hours. And not only that, but my partner Lucy is she's moving to a different industry, so I've basically given up half of my day, Monday to Friday, for her to work and to focus on getting herself ready to apply for jobs and just get ready to enter a workforce in a new industry. So she's got that stress that she has to deal with. So she's on maternity leave. So she takes half the day and I'll look after the baby for half the day. So really that leaves me with 2 days a week for half a day to do my online work, which is the biggest part of my business. And that's why sometimes I have to work weekends, usually to do client programs and that kind of thing. But I've got like 4 or 5 hours, 2 days a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, to try and get all my check-ins done, post on social media. And that's pretty much all I've got time for.
How are you kind of managing, sort of like, not just from a time perspective, but also from I guess guilt/mental perspective, in terms of balancing things out? Because obviously you have, your responsibilities to your family, but also you have your responsibility to your clients and your business, and it's something you want to grow. It's something you've sort of nurtured and brought from nothing to where it is now. How do you find that happy middle ground, or do you not? Is it a constant sort of seesaw?
Yeah, it is a constant seesaw, but I've decided that, having a look at all the things that I do within my business and deciding what's the most important thing for me to do. And definitely the family comes first, and I need to support Lucy so she can get a job, because if she gets a job and we've got 2 incomes coming in, that is going to be a huge weight lifted off both of our shoulders, instead of just relying on, what I get and her maternity leave. So that comes first. And then what can I do for my business? That's the most important thing. And I think that growth at this point for me is not realistic. So trying to manage my own expectations of what is realistic. And I don't think growth is something that I should be focusing on. So I have been posting less on social media. I've gone from like one post a day to maybe 3 posts a week. And really solely so I can do the most important thing, which is take care of my current clients. And I had a situation like this last year where I was in a similar situation where I could only focus on a few things. And it was stressful because I had a relatively lower client load at that point. But I was like, what's the most important thing? Take care of my current clients. I made sure I was there for when they needed me. I made sure their programs were ready for them. I made sure that their check-ins were still thorough. And it paid off really well last year because I had clients get some great transformations. So, I knew then that I'd done the right thing, and that's exactly what I'm doing now as well. First thing is making sure my clients are taken care of. Even if things slow down a little bit, I know that that's the right thing to do.
It's interesting. You've touched on a couple of things there I'll pick up on. And you mentioned about the most important thing. And it's one of my little mantras I always speak to my clients, and I talk about my MITs. What's the one thing you can do that if you did nothing else today would make things okay, would progress things? And it's pulling that one lever that gives you the biggest bang for your buck. And I think that's so important. And the other thing I'd like you to just maybe chat a little bit more about is, and I think this goes back to what you said right at the top of the show, and that is how you come out of a breakup. You weren't very happy physically. You felt sort of insecure. Mentally, you felt not the best. And I know we've touched on that sort of stuff before. Both of us have had similar sort of experiences with respect to self-esteem, I guess. But you also said a really interesting point that you love to see those transformations. So you'd rather focus on the handful of clients you've got at the moment and see their progress and see that happen. Someone said to me, and I only kind of really took this on board in the last year or so, but the more people you can help, the more successful you'll be. So maybe you'd like to sort of give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I suppose that can mean two things, really. I mean, I'm helping people every day on social media with the free content that I put out because I try and still make that educational. And of course, the hope of that doing that is, it's a marketing thing where people get exposure to me and maybe they'll sign up as become a client. So there's that aspect of helping more people. But for me, the most important thing for me is taking care of my clients. One, because they're paying me, I need to fulfill what I've promised, really. And like I said, I make sure I set expectations of, if you email me, I will get back to you within 48 hours, business hours generally. So 2 business days, I'll get back to you. I think it's better to set the expectation, and under promise and over deliver than the other way around. But yeah, I just know that the right thing to do is to help my current people because they're paying. And I know that if they have a good experience, they're going to tell people that they've had a good experience. And referrals really is the most, is where I get most clients from referrals.
And in terms of encouraging your clients to sort of grow in the way that you did in terms of self-esteem, reducing anxiety and stuff like that, is that very important to you as well? Is that part of your ethos?
Yeah, that's definitely part of my ethos. I think, and I've shared this a few times on social media, the message of, getting in better shape definitely does build confidence. And I don't think that it's necessarily just because you look a certain way. I think that definitely plays into it. Like if you have to take your shirt off to go in a public pool, or you're going to the beach or something, or just how your clothes fit, yeah, that can definitely help with a certain level of confidence. But I think, honestly, the most empowering thing about this whole journey is, well, literally the journey, really. It's the fact that you're showing up every day and you're putting in hard work no matter what you feel like. There's obviously days that you don't want to go to the gym, just like I'm sure there's days you wake up and you don't want to open up your laptop and get to work. But it's the discipline that you go through and you show up for yourself every single day and you see the progress. That is what makes people feel good and feel confident. That's definitely the case for me anyway.
I think progress is an interesting word there as well, because let's maybe backtrack as well and tell me how these kind of fitted into where you are today. Because I know from personal sort of experience the CrossFit background. I know about your Ollie lifting as well, your Olympic weightlifting. I also knew a little bit about your boxing as well. You did competitive boxing. Which one of those three things do you think were most formative, or was it a blend of the three things? And what did you take from those disciplines that you now apply, not just to like your business as a coach, but also to your family life as a dad and a husband or a partner?
Yeah, so the boxing was great. I did boxing for 5 or 6 years, and I also did Thai boxing in amongst that as well. And that was incredible for my own self-confidence and discipline, I would say. Knowing that I could defend myself if I needed to was great. One thing that you'll learn from any kind of martial art is you would just avoid a fight at all costs. You know, anyone that's on the street, you know, trying to get in a scrap, most of the time those people have never done martial arts classes, because you realize that you wouldn't want to hurt anyone and you wouldn't want anyone to get hurt. That definitely helped my confidence, knowing that I could take care of myself if I had to. And it still helps me knowing that if I had to defend my family or something, I could. You know, heavens forbid anything would happen. But it also makes me think about, I wouldn't mind getting my daughters into jujitsu so they could defend themselves. I think, you know, boxing's great, but it seems like jujitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, seems to be the best sport for taking care of yourself, I reckon.
I can vouch for that. I mean, because I did Okinawa and Goju-Ryu style of karate, very close to White Crane Kung Fu. But my daughter now, she's been doing about a year, 18 months of BJJ, and yeah, it's done wonders for her confidence, and it actually has kept a check on her big brother. She does
Okay.
actually look after herself, and I think you're absolutely right. I think especially for females, for daughters, etc. I think it's really important to teach them to it. You get to a point where the world isn't full of unicorns and rainbows,
Mhm.
and you have to find a happy medium. You have to find a nice way of conveying that, and give them the self-esteem and confidence to go out there and be comfortable. And I think, yeah, BJJ for sort of for girls is a great one.
Yeah. And I think it would be, if my especially older daughter could get into it and learn some discipline, that would be bloody awesome, because she is chaos, mate. She is absolutely ruckus. She prides herself on how cheeky she is and how ruckus she is. And so, you know, if she can learn to what's the word? Respect authority, I suppose, that would help out everyone.
I've got South Park ringing in my ears right now when you say respect my authority.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, do you know what? Funny enough, that's how I ended up getting into the martial arts. I had a little man's attitude, Kleinmanneke, Cardmanneke syndrome, and that's how I
Mm.
ended up after I got kicked out of rugby, and yeah, ended up doing it. And you realize there's always someone bigger, stronger, harder, and faster. And like you said, you then don't actually sort of get into a fight. Someone said the other day actually that your first weapon is actually your feet. You turn around and
Yeah.
you leg it in the other direction. So I think
Yeah.
that's quite important. And the lifting and the CrossFit, was that kind of by dint of just getting into the personal training sphere, and then you found yourself sort of having an affinity, because you are still. I haven't seen you recently, but your Ollie lifting when I saw you was like fantastic. It really was.
Yeah. Thank you, mate. I mean, I did CrossFit first, then I transitioned more to Olympic lifting. Um, and I qualified for the provincial level competitions here. So that was great. But yeah, in terms of what it taught me, I would say that CrossFit was great, because CrossFit is all around, you know, with weightlifting and, you know, just general going to the gym and lifting weights. It's great. But you do have the downtime, you know, you take long rests between your sets. And if you've got your phone with you, you know, you kind of, I know for me that I'm on my phone, you know, have a client email me or anything, check Instagram, has anyone replied to my post or whatever, you know. And so with CrossFit, it was just so good to turn off, and it was such well-rounded fitness. You were getting cardiovascular fitness in there. And one thing I'm trying to do now with my own fitness is to be a bit more well-rounded, and, you know, I try and get runs in and stuff now, if I get time. But one thing I want to touch on with the CrossFit training, and any style of cardiovascular training really, it really helps build mental resiliency, which is very important, I find, for being an entrepreneur. You know, if you feel confident and powerful, I guess, you know, you feel like you can overcome anything if you can go flat out for a 5K, you know, and you don't let the mind games beat you. Same if you do a CrossFit workout, you're always going to have the things in your head to say, slow down, you know, you should stop and walk or whatever. Pushing through that on a consistent, regular basis definitely helps mental resiliency for all aspects of your life.
I agree. I think the stick with it ability is fantastic. The great thing about CrossFit is obviously you have the peer pressure, you have the camaraderie and the peer pressure, which makes you kind of second guess whether you're going to quit because you know that there are people around you, and that just does drag you along, push you along. And I think that's really quite healthy because what it does, it's not about sort of like, you know, not wanting to lose face. It's more about realizing that you're stronger than you actually think. I mean, when I trained with my karate teacher, a guy called Gavin Mulholland, he always used to say, he said, your brain's the strong bit. Just tell your body to keep going. Tell your body to keep going. He used to have us doing, you know, the phrases cash in, cash out from CrossFit. But to do any grading, the black belt grading, for example, was a 100 push-up cash in. Then you could start the grading. You know, so you kind of think, well, okay. And he says, not, you know, it's the old adage, you know, it wasn't 100 push-ups, it was the same push-up 100 times. But I think you're very right. I'd not thought of it in that sense. What other sort of lessons have you got from the world of sort of fitness and nutrition that you think are applicable to the world of entrepreneurship?
Well, like we touched on earlier, you know, tracking certain things, and just discipline in general, because it's a roller coaster. Being a parent is a roller coaster. Being an entrepreneur is a roller coaster. And, you know, just learning to ride the ups and downs, you know, it is, especially, you know, I'm kind of like 4 years in and I'm still like, it's up and down, it's up and down. And it's so difficult to manage the emotions of all of that. But being realistic with expectations and tracking certain things, it's easy to compare yourself to someone else and say, this person's so far and I kind of, we started at the same time, this person seems to be ahead of me, or, you know, this person's popped up on Instagram, has loads of followers, you know, how come I don't have loads of followers? But, you know, understanding that you're on a completely different journey, family situations are completely different to those people. You cannot compare apples to oranges or even apples to apples at this point, you know. So I forget your question. I'm kind of going off on one a little bit, but it's an important message, I feel, to not compare yourself to where other people are, because I know that I have, and I know that there's another person that I am friends with, and he's an online coach as well, and he's got a family now of 3, and he's got a full-time job and he's doing better than me, you know. But you don't know the ins and outs of people's family dynamic. You don't know, you know, how much help or they do or don't have, and so you really can't compare yourself to where other people are. I guess that's a reminder for me as well, you know, because it's important.
Yeah, it's very true. You have no idea the sort of especially if your only window is through social media, you have no idea how many sort of filters, metaphorical or otherwise, you know, that information is being put through. And I actually said it to my kid this morning. The only person you need to compare yourself with is yourself from yesterday. You know, as long as you are doing one thing better than you did yesterday, that's all you need to care about.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of leads me into my next question, which is in terms of inspirations. Have you got any sort of inspirations that have come to you, whether it's people, books, or, you know, people you know directly, family members, or sort of famous people? Or are there anyone you kind of looked up at and went, yeah, I aspire to that, or you've just had good advice from?
Yeah, I touch on that in just a sec, because there was something that I wanted to say about, you know, closing off what we were just talking about there, because we were talking about tracking and the importance of tracking and comparing yourself to other people there. If you're tracking certain things, that whatever fits well for you in your business. For example, I track how many clients I currently have, how much revenue I made, I track how many followers I have. You can see the progression. if you don't track, you don't see the progression. And it comes back to, us tracking body weight, measurements, calories and macros. If you've got the data to see, whether you're making progress or not. But if you don't track, you don't know.
You're right, and we touched on this before before the show started, and I just said that I've just got back from my son's football tour in Belgium. So 4 or 5 days with other parents in the land of chips, waffles, and beer. And I was frankly shitting myself about getting on the scales. I made sure I did shit myself 2 or 3 times before I got on the scales. And I was pleasantly surprised, because not because I was like I didn't enjoy myself while I was away, but because of the discipline that you've instilled, and the measurements and the frameworks that you've kind of given with your coaching enable me to think, yeah, no, that's fine, that's enough. Or, okay, I overdid it there, so I'll not do as much here. I'll sort of not eat until midday tomorrow because I've really gone large today. And you're absolutely right. Without actually taking those efforts and measurements, you've got no idea. And every day is like a groundhog day, isn't it? You're starting from zero with no reference. It's that point of reference each time. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that is the biggest sort of crossover between the world of sport, nutrition, and training and entrepreneurship, is that measurement. I really do. So
yeah.
But yeah, sorry, I stopped you before you wrapped that question, but I was just then saying about sort of like inspirations, human or otherwise.
Yeah. Okay. So inspirations for me are mostly my family, because I, of course, would love to get to the point where, we're fully secure financially. We can take trips once or twice a year without it being, stressful. And as you know, I'm here in Canada. My family, my mum, dad, brothers are all in the UK. So one of the big things that keeps me pushing is I would love to be able to travel back and forth more often. If I can work from my laptop, that's great. I'm already checking that box, but it's more like, now I need to have enough clients to be able to, and I need to have the systems in place to service those clients. But I'd love to be able to travel back and forth home a little bit more so I can see my family.
I think that's a big one for me too. I've obviously got quite a few years on you, so my family tend to be sort of sideways or younger than me. But yeah, for me, it's very much about creating a legacy, about having that freedom of choice. Freedom of movement, freedom of choice, which are kind of the things that you just touched upon. How do you kind of bring your family, be that your partner or be that the girls, do you bring them into your world of personal training, of coaching, and of entrepreneurship? Do you kind of have them sort of get involved, or do you kind of keep it arm's length and box your life off neatly?
Yeah, good question. I think I'm trying to figure this out a little bit at the moment for myself, because up until now, I've definitely been fully open on social media about, this is my family, this is who they are, what their names, what they look like, that kind of thing. But recently I'm like, I don't know if it just seems like everyone that follows me, I have a pretty good connection with, because my audience on social media isn't as huge as some other people's. I don't get regular trolls and stuff. But if I was to grow my audience, do I still want to have my family as part of my quote unquote brand? Because it is a part of my brand. It's like I'm a family guy, so it's part of who I am, and I share that on social media. I don't know if I had a huge audience, whether I would want to do that, or maybe I'd want to hide their names, that kind of thing. But in terms of having them part of my business, my partner Lucy is definitely a massive soundboard for me when I need to bounce ideas off of her. She's the first one I go to if I'm stressed about something and I want to talk things over. So, in that sense, she's there for me with my business. And that's a great, great help to have her in my corner, because the whole thing of what we're doing really is, to make our family a more secure unit, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. For me, it is very much about the family. I was having a conversation with an accountability group I belonged to last night, and they were saying, "Hey, what's your purpose in life? What's your big ideal?" And I kind of think they were thinking along the lines of saving the rainforest and stuff like that. But for me, it was much more simple. It was to have a secure legacy. And by legacy, I mean a wealthy legacy. And wealth is not just about money, it's about having the travel, having the family, having, the sort of a well-rounded lifestyle that goes with it. And for me, the way of getting that is by helping lots of people. So in of itself, that's enough of a purpose for me. I think if you kind of look after your immediate sort of little circle, if you look after your family and then your street, then your village, etc., that sort of stuff, that's the the easiest way of getting what we spoke about, leverage earlier, having some sort of success on that front. You just mentioned about trolls, and you kind of like only have the occasional troll. Something I've thought about, and touch wood, and it will happen, I'm sure. I've not really encountered that too much. I recently dipped into Twitter only because a friend of mine sort of keeps sending me links from it. So I started dipped in, and I'm kind of watching from the edge, sort of sitting on the edge of the pool, not taking my shirt off. And I think, wow, this is such a horrible world. How do you deal with the occasional troll that you do get? Bearing in mind, you said earlier, about sort of self-esteem and, some of the reasons why you got into personal training. How do you handle that?
Yeah, well, there's always going to be trolls. And when trolls come at you, which they have for me a little bit, one on TikTok specifically bad, it was a very personal attack. And it does hurt, it does hurt, but it's how you react to it, really. But one thing that Gary Vee says is, there's always going to be trolls, and don't feel bad for yourself, feel bad for them, because for someone to be in a position where they are trolling you, being so negative, it just shows what they're going through as a person. And especially if they go into personal attacks, whether it's something you're self-conscious of or not, it's like the lowest form of argument. I post a lot of stuff about fitness and nutrition. Of course, there's going to be people that disagree with me, but who has got a valid point if they've got nothing to say except something personal? And when I respond to those kind of comments, I usually give it some time to think over, because my initial reaction is to be defensive and come back and that kind of thing. And then what I try and do now is I understand, like, people see these comments. Other people that stumble upon my page will see the comment that this person has left. I could delete the comment, of course, or I could, respond in a funny way or an educational way. And my response is not for that person, but for other people that land on my page. And so my goal of leaving comments and replies to that kind of person is not to argue with them, but to show other people that land on the page that I'm not going to succumb to that kind of low level of degradation, and I'm going to focus on education. So people see that, they hopefully say, I like this guy, he's not going down a rabbit hole trying to argue with this one person who was completely rude. And then maybe they'll be interested in, following me potentially.
I think that's spot on, isn't it? And it's the difference between responding, which is what you're saying that you do, and reacting. And reacting is the emotional ego, sort of like going straight back on the defensive. It's an amygdala fight, flight, or freeze kind of response. And I think that's what really blew me away about my, I've only been back on Twitter for a month, and other than my LinkedIn posts automatically posting up there, I don't go on. I'll kind of sit on the edge, and I'll follow people who are inspirational and stuff like that. But I won't, I mean, Canada, I don't know how it is there. I think it's becoming a little bit polarized as well. States just south of the border for you, massively polarized. Over here in the UK, I think we touched on it when you were here last year. Again, you can feel the polarization. It feels like a them and an us the whole time. And it's very sort of like, are you in the blue camp? Are you in the red camp? Because if you, I'm not going to talk to you, and it's quite horrible, isn't it, when it does have to get to that level of just being a personal attack, as opposed to respecting other people's views and just sort of listening. I think you listening and then just responding either with humor or with knowledge is like a really sort of noble and sort of mature way of handling it.
Yeah, I mean, I have done it in the past where I've gone based on my reaction. I react to it and I get defensive, and it never goes well. It never goes well. Just feel crappy about yourself. And yeah, I just think it's like the lowest thing someone can do is just attack you personally because you've said like this carbohydrate is better than this one or something. It's like, but you are going to get that. I've heard Twitter's pretty bad as well. But you've got to remember as well, it's like all publicity is good publicity. So, someone commenting on your stuff, it's additional engagement that can push it to a wider audience as well. So
Yeah.
it's if you are getting, if someone listening here is like on social media and they post regularly for their business, polarity is good. And so if you are getting to the point where people are commenting and disagreeing with you, that's a good thing, because it means that your content is getting seen by more people, and that those people are reacting to it, whether that's positive or negative. It gives you more opportunity to either refine your message, because maybe there is things like, I know that I've posted stuff and people have commented and I've been thinking like, oh, actually, maybe they're right. Maybe I could have made that more clear in my message. So there is things you can learn from some of the trolls. But then other times it's good for you to, think about what can you say back. And again, it's refining your message in that sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think you have to, it's not a question of standing out for the sake of standing out, but you do have to sometimes sort of nail your colors to a mast, sort
Yeah.
of mixing my metaphors, etc. I don't think it's any sort of like surprise if you go into an ice cream parlor, vanilla is always the least favorite flavor. I think plain vanilla just doesn't work, does it? But you've got to be sort of really out there, and not to the point of being controversial for the sake of it, but equally,
Yeah.
as you said, if you can then have an intelligent conversation back and say, hey, well, that's a really good point, thanks very much, I hadn't thought of it in that respect, they can't really come back. And if they do come back, well, frankly, they're a bit of a twat, right?
Exactly. Yeah, but like you said, I think it's important to take a stance on something as well.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to do that. I know for like the first 2 or 3 years of posting on social media, I was scared to say what I really felt. And even sometimes now I feel that, because I don't want to upset anyone, because I know that some of my friends that follow me might not agree with me, even though, they're not going to become clients, my friends, but you don't want to upset anyone. You don't want to ruffle any feathers, but, really got to take a stance on what you believe in, and then just be prepared to back yourself up and argue your case, but be open to changing your mind. And so that's kind of one thing that I've been working on the last 6 months to a year, is just trying to take a stance and kind of roll with it, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's a sign of a big person, to have an opinion, but then to be open to refining that opinion. So one of the last questions, because we're kind of slowly getting to the end of this, but which mountain would you die on? Which mast would you nail your colors to? You're just saying that you've learned that you have to give an opinion. There are opinions out there that you really need to put out. Which one do you strongly feel in at the moment?
Do you mean in terms of fitness?
Let's take one from fitness and one from being a parent/parentpreneur. Yeah. What are the two areas?
Yeah. So, I mean, my initial, going back to the inspiration thing, obviously family was one, a massive inspiration, but the other is my message, and my real reason for becoming a coach and for doing all of this is, I've gone through my own transformation. I've screwed up so many times with my own training and nutrition. I've done all the fad diets. I've done all of that shit. Excuse my language, but I've done all of it. And now I'm here to help other people navigate that. And so, my stance is things like keto, carnivore, intermittent fasting, all of these things that people go to through no fault of their own, because, it's pushed in their face every day by other people on social media, by magazines, keto friendly this, keto friendly that. It's my mission and purpose to help people navigate that. because no one needs to do any of those things. It's not a one size fits all. You know, people can lose weight on keto, people can lose weight on intermittent fasting, but that's not the underlying principle of how someone loses weight. So my goal is to educate people on these principles of how the body loses weight and how you can best fit it into your lifestyle so that you can actually maintain it. Because, you know, everyone knows, you know, someone will do keto for 2 weeks, they'll lose a bunch of weight, but they don't understand that that weight is just mostly water. And you know, me teaching you the principle of how that's the case is going to take too long for this podcast. But, you know, that's the whole thing. It's educating you on how you can best fit fitness into your life and not just follow the crowd and what's being pushed to you by magazines. So that's my stance, is teaching people the principles and then working with people to navigate based on their current personal situation.
And how about which flag with respect to your family and being a sort of parent? What's your sort of main principle? What's your main point that you would stand by?
Still trying to figure that one out, I guess. But I would say that one of the most important things is, you know, setting clear boundaries. And I think that the fact of just having kids has helped me set boundaries without trying to, because kids get home from school, they have to, you know, they can't just sit there, you know, you need to wrap up work and you need to get on with it. Kids are at home at the weekends, they're off for summer, you know, all of these things that you need to set clear boundaries and be there for your family. I mean, at the end of the day, material wealth, okay, up to a certain point, that's great. But I would suggest, you know, or one of my flags would be that, you know, family time is important, and, you know, setting clear boundaries, like I said.
I think one of the most important things I've learned is about mistakes. And obviously you're always told to learn from your mistakes, but another thing is it's a lot easier to learn from other people's mistakes. I'm gonna read you a quote which you can tell me if it's wrong, but I believe this is from you. It might have been from like one of your About Me pages, but it says, "With the knowledge I have now, I could have saved myself years of frustration and could have gained the physique and fulfillment I have today in a much shorter period of time." That for
That's right.
me, when I saw that and read that, I thought, you know what, that obviously applies to the world of fitness and nutrition. You know, you're buff, you know how to eat, you know, you understand about the macros and all of that, but it's really, really applicable to the whole world of parentpreneuring as well. You know, it's about finding, not even finding hacks or tricks or stuff like that. It's just about, as you said earlier, the most important thing, discovering those most important things. I think that's what I admire most about you, is that you've managed to sort of distill things down on your work and your family side to that.
Yeah. And there is no secrets, you know? And so, like you said, learning from your own mistakes and then learning from the mistakes of other people, whether that be via a coach or a mentor, you know, it definitely makes things easier. Having someone that's been through it before is incredibly powerful. So I completely agree with that.
You said earlier about sort of the fact that you're kind of on a maintenance program with respect to growing the business, etc. at the moment because of the domestic situation, because of the home situation. But what does the future hold for Andy Tait, Coach Taiters, in terms of the business? You know, this current period aside.
Yeah. So in September, my daughter goes to daycare. The baby. So we're going to be bloody celebrating that, which means that, and also that'll be the time that my partner Lucy will get a job, hopefully. So she'll be back at work. Baby will be going to daycare, and I will go from having like 2 half days a week to work on my biggest income builder, to having all the time, not all the time in the world, but be having like all my days back, except for the in-person work that I do. So that is something that I'm really looking forward to. Now I have to be careful that I don't, you know, what is it, Parkinson's law, you know, work expands to fill the time that is set for it. I have to be very careful with that, because I've had that in the past where I dilly-dally and stuff. But my goal is to get to a point where I'm kind of working with 30 to 50 clients. Right now, I'm kind of between 15 to 20. And so if I can get to 30 to 50, that would be life-changing for me, because, I don't need anything more than that. I think that I could manage that if I had the extra time back. I could definitely continue to working with that many people, and still provide a good level of service. But that would also fulfill a lot of the other things. Now, I'm thinking I think 30 clients could be a year or two away, and then maybe I'd have to refine my processes and things so I could work with a few more. But to get to 30 clients would be game changing, life changing.
No, I agree. I think that's one of the things I always talk to about with my clients, not just the parentpreneurs, but the sort of the SMEs, the small, medium-sized businesses that I deal with. Scalability is everything. That's cash flow and scalability. They're the two things that sink or swim a small business and a business person. And having those processes in place where you can just go from 15 to 30, 2 exits straight away, is like absolutely essential.
Yeah, but just to add to that, I think there's so many people, especially in the fitness space, which are fitness business coaches. And I'm in a mentorship, and it's fantastic, but I've picked one that fits well with my values. But there's a lot of people that will, that get rich quick. There's those kind of coaches in this space as well. And it takes much longer than you think to build up to a point. I mean, some people will get there much quicker, but they're usually outliers, or have had some very good luck, or have been working behind the scenes on building up their knowledge of whatever for many years that you don't know about. So being understanding that it does take years to get to the point where you'll get comfortable and you get security. It's like the meme with the guy with the pickaxe. Do you see that meme where the guy's like trying to get to the gold, and the guy gives up, and he's basically got this much left to get to the gold. He's basically at the gold, and he gives up. But there's one guy that just keeps chipping away, much slower, but he just continues on.
And hits the vein. No, I agree. It's that's a nice image, and that's a nice way of summarizing it. So where can people learn more about you and what you're up to at the moment? And I appreciate you say you're not taking on more clients, but if more clients rocked up, where would they find you?
Well, if people, I don't have enough bandwidth to really take on a lot of clients, but I do have some coaching spots available. If people were interested, they can probably best bet is to head to my Instagram, which is at Coach Taiters, or my website. If you don't have Instagram, you can head to my website, which is coachtaiters.com. Tait is Tait, not TAT. But yeah, you could definitely go there. I post a lot of free stuff on Instagram, a lot of educational stuff. I have blogs on my website that you can learn a lot from. And if you were interested in getting to know if we could work together, then the best bet is to start there, see what I'm about, see kind of my how I approach fitness and nutrition, and if it interests you, then I'm here if you would like to.
We'll put all those in the show notes so people can just click through and find you easily enough. And I can highly recommend it. There's a good balance between like knowledge and humor in there as well. So it's good stuff. Andy, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's great. And I know it's been a bit of a juggle between the two of us. You're at the front end of your day. I'm at the sort of back end of my day. My kids are out swimming right now, so I've got peace and quiet for a while, and yours are asleep and otherwise engaged. But yeah, really appreciate your time, and as ever, wonderful to speak to you and great to see you as well.
Likewise, mate. Thank you so much.